Humble beginnings, the autumn rain tapped steadily against the windows of Omar Fareed's office at Westridge University. At 34, he had achieved what many considered academic success. Tenured professor of comparative literature, published author, and respected scholar. He absently adjusted his wire-rimmed glasses as he peered at the clock, 8:30 p.m. His stomach growled in protest of the forgotten dinner hour. With a sigh, Omar pulled out his phone and opened the delivery app. The university's hallways were nearly empty this late, most professors having retreated to their comfortable homes hours ago. But Omar had lost track of time again, caught in the beautiful intricacies of Persian poetry, the subject of his next book. 20 minutes later, a notification pinged. Your driver has arrived. The woman standing at his office door was not what he expected. She couldn't have been more than 27, with deep brown eyes that sparked with intelligence despite the evident fatigue in them. Her thick black hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail, and she wore a faded blue jacket with the delivery company's logo partially obscured by a small tear on the shoulder. Professor Fareed? She asked, consulting her phone. Dinner order for the Insomniac in Humanities Building, room 342? Omar smiled despite himself. I didn't actually write that in the delivery notes. You didn't have to, she replied with a quick grin. I recognized the name. I took your Introduction to World Literature course 3 years ago as a night student. I'm Nisha Rai. The name didn't immediately register, but Omar felt a twinge of embarrassment. He taught hundreds of students each year, and the night classes particularly tended to blur together. I'm sorry, I should remember. Don't worry about it, Nisha said, handing him the paper bag. I was quiet in class, but your lectures on Rumi changed my perspective on, well, everything. I still have the notes. Something about her directness caught him off guard. You're taking classes while working deliveries. Was, she corrected. Had to pause the education part. Family situation. She didn't elaborate, but there was a quiet dignity in her restraint that intrigued him. Omar hesitated, then asked, Do you have time for a cup of tea? The faculty lounge has a decent selection, and I'd love to hear which parts of Rumi resonated with you. Surprise flickered across her face. I have 2 more deliveries, but thank you, Professor Fareed. Omar, he corrected automatically. Omar, she repeated, and the sound of his name in her voice felt unexpectedly significant. Maybe another time. That another time came sooner than expected. The next evening, Omar found himself ordering from the same restaurant, and by what he told himself was pure coincidence, Nisha was his delivery driver again. Following me, Professor? She teased, her eyes crinkling at the corners. Over the next 3 weeks, their brief encounters extended into conversations, first in his office doorway, then the bench outside the Humanities Building, and finally a proper dinner at a small cafe near campus. Omar learned that Nisha had been studying business administration before her parents were critically injured in an accident 2 years ago. Now she worked 3 jobs to support her teenage siblings and cover the medical bills that kept mounting. Tara's 16, brilliant at math. Devon's 14, obsessed with engineering and taking apart everything in the apartment, she said with a mixture of pride and exhaustion. They deserve better than what I can give them. What you're doing for them is remarkable, Omar said softly. Most people couldn't handle that responsibility, Nisha shrugged. You do what you have to for family. When Omar invited Nisha to the university's annual literary gala as his guest, he didn't anticipate the reactions from his colleagues. Professor Harriet Wilkins, the department chair, cornered him by the refreshment table. Omar, darling, your friend seems lovely, but perhaps a bit out of her element. Dean Richardson was asking questions. Questions about what? Omar asked, watching Nisha across the room as she examined a first edition of Gibran's The Prophet with genuine interest. About your judgment, frankly. You're up for the department's leadership committee. Appearances matter. Omar felt his jaw tighten. Her appearance is that of a woman who sacrificed her education to care for her family. Who works harder than anyone in this room, including me. That's very noble, Harriet said with a thin smile. But we all know these little infatuations with the working class never last. You come from the Fareed family, for heaven's sake. Your father built half the university library. As Omar opened his mouth to respond, Nisha appeared at his side. From the shadow in her eyes, he knew she had overheard. I should go, she whispered. This was a mistake. No, Omar said firmly, taking her hand. The only mistake would be caring what anyone else thinks. That night, walking Nisha to her apartment in the rain-slick streets of the city's east side, Omar realized he was falling in love not with an idea or a cause, but with Nisha herself, her resilience, her quiet strength, her uncompromising love for her siblings. And when she stood on tiptoe to kiss him goodnight, the world seemed to shift beneath his feet. What neither of them knew was that across the city, in a sleek high-rise office, a lawyer was preparing a letter that would change everything, a letter about an inheritance that would transform Nisha's life beyond recognition. Against all odds, the whispers started slowly, then spread through the university like autumn leaves caught in a breeze. Omar Fareed, the golden boy of the literature department, descendant of the prestigious Fareed family, was dating a delivery driver, a woman who hadn't even completed her degree. She's using him, Professor Reynolds muttered in the faculty lounge. Probably sees dollar signs when she looks at him. It's that midlife crisis thing, suggested Dr. Lawson from economics, though he's starting early. Omar ignored the comments, the sidelong glances, the sudden silences when he entered rooms. But they wore on him nonetheless, like water slowly eroding stone, not because he cared what his colleagues thought, but because of how it might affect Nisha. One evening, Omar's phone rang as he was grading papers. It was his mother, Amira Fareed, socialite and philanthropist. Omar, darling, I've just had the most interesting lunch with Harriet Wilkins. Omar closed his eyes briefly. Let me guess. She told you about Nisha. She mentioned you've been seeing someone unconventional. I've invited you both to dinner on Saturday. Your father and I would like to meet this young woman. The Fareed estate sprawled across 3 acres in the city's most exclusive neighborhood. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked manicured gardens, and original artwork adorned walls that had witnessed generations of power and influence. Against this backdrop, Nisha seemed smaller somehow, though she held herself with quiet dignity in a borrowed dress. So, Nisha, Ibrahim Fareed said, swirling his wine with practiced indifference. Omar tells us you're in the delivery industry? Currently, yes, Nisha answered, her voice steady. I work for 3 different services plus weekend shifts at Meadowbrook Nursing Home. How industrious, Amira remarked with a thin smile. And your parents? My mother was an elementary school teacher. My father worked in construction. They're both in long-term care facilities now after a car accident, 2 years ago. I see. The dismissal in those 2 words hung in the air like a verdict. Omar reached for Nisha's hand under the table, squeezing gently. Nisha put her education on hold to care for her siblings and parents. She works harder than anyone I know. Admirable, Ibrahim said in a tone that suggested anything but admiration. Though surely there are social services for situations like hers. My family is my responsibility, Nisha said quietly but firmly. I don't expect others to carry that burden. And yet, Amira interjected with practiced politeness, here you are with our son, who comes from quite a different background. You must understand our concern that perhaps you see Omar as a solution to your difficulties. Omar felt Nisha stiffen beside him. Mother, he began, anger rising in his throat. No, it's a fair question, Nisha interrupted, setting down her fork. Mrs. Fareed, I understand how this looks to you, but I was managing my life before I met your son, and I'll continue managing it regardless of our relationship. I don't need Omar to rescue me. Her voice softened. I just enjoy being with someone who sees me as more than my circumstances. The silence that followed was broken only by the gentle clink of expensive silverware against fine china. Later that night, as they drove back to Nisha's apartment in Omar's modest sedan, his one rebellion against his family's ostentatious wealth, Nisha was unusually quiet. I'm sorry about tonight, Omar said finally. Don't be. They're protecting their son. I get it. She looked out the window at the city lights blurring past, but it made me think about something. What's that? We come from different worlds, Omar. Tonight made that painfully clear. Omar pulled the car over and turned to face her. Do you think I care about any of that? About what my parents think or my colleagues? Maybe you should, she said softly. You've worked hard for your position. I don't want to be the reason you lose opportunities. That department leadership position means nothing compared to what I feel for you, Omar finished. Nisha, when I'm with you, I feel more authentic than I ever have. My whole life has been following expectations. The right schools, the right career, the right social circle. You're the first choice I've made purely for myself." Nisha's eyes shimmered with unshed tears. "And what happens when the novelty wears off? When you get tired of my crazy schedule or my cramped apartment or having to explain to your friends why your girlfriend delivers their dinner? That won't happen. You can't know that. I can. Because this isn't about your job or your apartment." He touched her cheek gently. "It's about how you read poetry to your brother to help him fall asleep after nightmares. How you know exactly how each of your elderly patients at the nursing home takes their tea. How you see beauty in ordinary moments that everyone else misses." A tear slipped down Nisha's cheek. "I'm scared, Omar. Not of your world, but of losing mine. Of becoming someone who doesn't recognize herself anymore. Then we'll build something new together," he promised. "Something that honors both our worlds." The next morning, Omar arrived at his office to find Dean Richardson waiting. "Omar, I'll be direct. Your relationship is becoming a topic of discussion. The university has a certain image to maintain." Omar felt cold anger settling in his stomach. "Are you suggesting my personal life affects my professional capabilities?" "I'm suggesting that the Farid name carries weight here. Your father's donations have built 3 wings of this university, but continued support depends on the family's confidence in our values." "I see." Omar straightened papers on his desk, a gesture of control when he felt anything but. "And dating someone from a working-class background violates these values?" The dean had the grace to look uncomfortable. "Of course not. But there are questions about her motives, rumors about how you met. We met because I ordered dinner while working late. A scandalous beginning, clearly." "Omar, no, I understand perfectly." Omar stood. "If the leadership committee position depends on who I choose to love, then I respectfully withdraw my name from consideration." Across town, Nisha faced her own judgment. Her closest friend Priya sat at Nisha's kitchen table while the younger siblings did homework in the next room. "I'm just saying, be careful," Priya warned. "Men like him, rich, educated from powerful families, they don't end up with women like us. Not permanently." "Omar's different," Nisha insisted, though doubt had taken root in her heart. "They're all different until they're not." Priya softened her tone. "I just don't want to see you hurt. Or worse, have Tara and Devon get attached to him only to be disappointed." That night, as Nisha made dinner for her siblings, her phone buzzed with a text from Omar. "Bad day. Could use your perspective. Can I come over?" An hour later, they sat on the fire escape outside her apartment window, the only private space available in the small unit. Omar told her about the dean, about withdrawing from the committee. "You shouldn't have done that," Nisha said. "You've worked too hard." "I made my choice," Omar replied simply. "But I've been thinking about what you said about different worlds." He took her hand. "Maybe the point isn't that we come from different places. Maybe it's that we're heading toward the same one." "And what place is that?" "I don't know yet," he admitted. "But I want to find out. Together." As they sat in comfortable silence, watching the city lights flicker against the darkening sky, neither could have imagined how dramatically their journey would shift with the arrival of a single letter. A letter that was at that very moment being prepared in a lawyer's office across the country. The unexpected letter. The envelope was unremarkable, cream-colored standard business size, with Nisha's name and address printed in precise black letters. It arrived on a Tuesday morning mixed with bills and flyers, nearly discarded as junk mail until Nisha noticed the return address. Thornton Blackwell and Associates, attorneys at law. "Probably another medical bill collection," she muttered, slitting the envelope open as she stood in the apartment hallway. Her eyes scanned the first paragraph, then froze. "Dear Ms. Nisha Rai, it is our solemn duty to inform you of the passing of Mr. Vikram Patel, your maternal grandfather, on October 17th. As the designated executors of Mr. Patel's estate, we are instructed to inform you that you have been named as the sole heir to his holdings, including majority ownership of Patel Innovations, Inc." Nisha's knees weakened. She slid down against the wall, reading and rereading the letter as if the words might rearrange themselves into something that made sense. Vikram Patel, a name she had heard only in whispers. The grandfather who had disowned her mother 28 years ago for marrying beneath her station. The tech pioneer whose face occasionally appeared in business magazines. The man who had never acknowledged Nisha's existence, And now, according to this letter, she owned his company. All of it. "Ms. Rye, we understand this news may come as a shock," said Jeffrey Thornton, senior partner at Thornton, Blackwell & Associates. His voice carried the practiced sympathy of someone who had delivered life-altering news many times before. "Mr. Patel made this decision several months ago, though he chose not to inform you directly." Nisha sat rigidly in the plush leather chair across from the attorney's desk. Omar had insisted on accompanying her to the meeting, and now his steady presence beside her was the only thing keeping her grounded. "I don't understand," Nisha said. "He never contacted me, never showed any interest in my life or my mother's after he cut her off." Thornton nodded. "Your grandfather was complicated, but it seems he kept closer tabs on your family than you realized. After your parents' accident, he began receiving regular reports on your situation. He was spying on us?" Nisha felt a chill. Monitoring, perhaps. Thornton slid a folder across the desk. "He was particularly impressed by your dedication to your siblings and parents. Your refusal to abandon your responsibilities, even at great personal cost." Omar squeezed Nisha's hand as she opened the folder. Inside were photographs. Nisha leaving her apartment at dawn for her first shift. Nisha helping her sister with homework. Nisha visiting her parents at the care facility. All taken from a distance without her knowledge. "This is disturbing," Omar said quietly. "Perhaps," Thornton acknowledged, but it led to his decision. Mr. Patel valued determination above all else. He built his empire from nothing, and he recognized that same drive in you, Ms. Rye. Nisha closed the folder. "And the company? What exactly am I inheriting?" "Patel Innovations is currently valued at approximately $4.3 billion, Thornton said matter-of-factly. "You now own 67% of the shares, making you the controlling interest and, should you choose to accept, CEO." The number hung in the air between them, incomprehensible. Nisha felt Omar stiffen beside her. "There must be a mistake," she said. "No mistake. Though there is a condition." Thornton removed his glasses. "You must take an active role in the company." Mr. Patel was explicit. "This is not a passive inheritance. You have 3 months to assume leadership, or the shares will be distributed among the board members according to a secondary plan." As they left the attorney's office, Nisha moved as if in a trance. The busy downtown street seemed surreal. How could the world continue normally when hers had just been turned inside out? "Say something," she finally whispered to Omar, who had been uncharacteristically silent since they'd heard the final figure. "I don't know what to say," he admitted. $4 billion, Nisha, it's beyond comprehension. Are you angry?" Omar stopped walking. "Why would I be angry?" "Because everything changes now. Everything we just talked about, building something together, finding our way. It's all different." Omar's expression softened. "Nisha, this doesn't change who you are, or how I feel about you." "But it will," she insisted. "Can't you see? Overnight, I've gone from the delivery driver your colleagues pitied to someone they'll want to cultivate. Your parents will suddenly find me acceptable. People who wouldn't give me the time of day last week will be calling me their dear friend next week." Her voice broke. "How will I know what's real anymore?" Omar pulled her into his arms right there on the crowded sidewalk. "This is real," he murmured against her hair. "Us, this moment. The rest is just circumstances." But circumstances proved more complex than either anticipated. Within days, news of Vikram Patel's unexpected heir broke in the business press. Nisha's phone rang constantly with calls from reporters, distant relatives she'd never heard of, and Patel Innovations executives anxious to secure their positions with the new owner. The apartment became untenable as photographers camped outside. For the siblings' safety, Thornton arranged temporary housing in a secured building owned by the Patel estate. "This is insane," Tara, Nisha's 16-year-old sister, said as they entered the penthouse apartment with its panoramic city views and furnishings that cost more than their entire previous home. "Are we seriously billionaires now?" "You're still you," Nisha said firmly, setting down her single suitcase in the vast living room. "And we're still us." The money doesn't define us, but the words sounded hollow even to her own ears, because the truth was money was already changing everything. When Nisha tried to report for her nursing home shift that weekend, the director insisted she take paid leave. "We can't have you working here with paparazzi following you," he explained awkwardly. "It disturbs the residents. Her delivery app suspended, her accounts for security reasons, even her siblings' school called to discuss additional security protocols for the suddenly high-profile family. Most disturbing were the board, members of Patel Innovations. They arrived at her temporary home in waves, men and women in impeccable suits carrying folders and tablets, speaking a language of acquisitions and market shares and quarterly projections that felt like a foreign tongue. "You'll need to make a decision about the Jensen merger by next week," explained Rohan Kapoor, the acting CEO. "And the R&D team needs direction on the quantum computing initiative. We're burning through $2 million a day on that project." Nisha nodded as if she understood, while panic rose in her throat. What did she know about running a tech company? Her business classes seemed laughably inadequate in the face of billion-dollar decisions. "I need time," she kept saying. "I need to understand what I'm walking into." "Time is luxury in this business," replied Director Sharma, the oldest board member. "And frankly, Ms. Rai, many of us question whether you're equipped for this role at all." The implication was clear. They expected her to fail. Perhaps even hoped for it. Omar became her anchor in the storm. He arranged a leave of absence from the university to help Nisha navigate her new reality. Together, they created a crash course in corporate governance, technology trends, and the history of Patel Innovations. "Your grandfather was a visionary," Omar said one night as they pored over company archives. "He predicted the shift to mobile computing 3 years before the first smartphone. He saw the potential in renewable energy when everyone else was still invested in oil." "But why me?" Nisha whispered. "He could have trained someone, prepared them." "Maybe that's exactly what he's doing now," Omar suggested, in his own way. As the 3-month deadline approached, Nisha made her first major decision. She arranged for her parents to be transferred to the country's best rehabilitation facility, with round-the-clock specialized care. Seeing her mother awake and responsive for the first time in months, Nisha felt a surge of gratitude for the resources now at her disposal. "He would have helped earlier if he truly cared," her mother said weakly, when Nisha explained about Vikram Patel's inheritance. "My father always believed people should save themselves, like you did when you left him to marry Dad." Her mother smiled faintly. "Like you've been doing since our accident. He saw himself in you, Nisha, his determination, his pride." The night before Nisha was to give her formal decision to the board, Omar found her sitting alone on the penthouse balcony, staring at the city lights below. "Having second thoughts?" he asked gently. "Fourth and fifth thoughts," she admitted. "Part of me wants to walk away from all of it. Go back to our old life." "You could," Omar said, sitting beside her. "The money alone would secure your family's future, even without the company. But that feels like failure. Like proving all those board members right, that I'm just a delivery driver who got lucky." She turned to him. "And there's something else. Something I haven't told you." "What is it?" "I've been reviewing the company's research division. They're developing medical technology that could help people like my parents. Neural interfaces that might restore function after brain injuries. If I'm in charge, I could prioritize that research, make it accessible to everyone, not just the wealthy." Omar studied her face in the moonlight. "You're starting to see the possibilities, aren't you?" "The good you could do?" "Yes," she whispered. "And it terrifies me. What if I make the wrong choices? What if power changes me? Then I'll remind you who you are," Omar promised. "Every day, if necessary." As dawn broke over the city, Nisha made her decision. She would accept her inheritance with all its complexities and responsibilities. She would become CEO of Patel Innovations, not because her grandfather had decreed it, but because she chose it. What she couldn't yet see was how this choice would test her relationship with Omar in ways neither had imagined. Shifting tides, the Patel Innovations headquarters occupied 30 floors of a gleaming glass tower in the heart of the financial district. At 9 a.m. on a bright Monday morning, Nisha Rai stepped through its revolving doors for her first official day as CEO. The security guards, who last month would have directed her to the service entrance had she arrived with a food delivery, now snapped to attention. "Good morning." "Ms. Rai," they said in practiced unison. Nisha nodded, her new designer suit feeling like a costume. The express elevator whisked her to the executive floor, where her corner office waited. A vast space of polished concrete and glass with views that stretched to the mountains beyond the city limits. "Your schedule, Ms. Rai," said Josephine, the executive assistant she had inherited along with the office. The woman's crisp efficiency made Nisha feel impossibly young and unprepared. The executive team awaits you in the conference room. After that, you have calls with Tokyo and London, followed by a lunch meeting with Representative Wilson about the tech regulation bill. Nisha took a deep breath. Thank you, Josephine. In the conference room, 12 faces turned toward her as she entered, the same board members who had questioned her competence just weeks ago. Now they smiled with careful deference, though wariness lingered in their eyes. Let me be direct, Nisha began, setting aside the prepared remarks the PR team had crafted for her. 3 months ago, I was delivering your dinner orders and caring for elderly patients. I didn't ask for this position, but I'm here now, and I intend to honor my grandfather's legacy while creating my own. She moved to the head of the table, feeling the weight of their scrutiny. I know what you're thinking. How long before the delivery girl crashes this billion-dollar company? But here's what you don't know about me. I've been managing my family's survival on pennies for 2 years. I've negotiated with insurance companies, medical facilities, and social services to keep my parents alive and my siblings safe. I know how to stretch resources, identify priorities, and make hard choices. Nisha opened the folder before her. I've reviewed all our current projects and financials. The quantum computing initiative is bleeding money without clear benchmarks. The Indonesian expansion ignores critical cultural factors, and our medical tech division has breakthrough potential that's being starved of resources. A murmur of surprise rippled through the room. She hadn't just been playing CEO. She'd been studying the company with the same determination that had kept her family afloat. I don't expect your confidence immediately, she continued. I expect to earn it. But I do require your honesty and your expertise. In return, I promise to listen before I decide. She looked each board member in the eye. My first act as CEO will be to restructure our R&D funding model. I'll need detailed proposals on my desk by the end of the week. As the meeting concluded, Rohan Kapoor, the former acting CEO, lingered. Impressive first showing, he said, his tone caught between admiration and assessment. But running a multinational corporation isn't like managing a household budget. No, Nisha agreed. The stakes are higher, but the principles remain. Identify what matters most and protect it at all costs. The weeks that followed passed in a blur of meetings, decisions, and increasingly rare moments at home. Nisha immersed herself in the business, determined to prove her worth, not to the board but to herself. She overhauled the medical technology division, personally recruited top researchers from competing firms, and initiated a foundation to ensure any breakthroughs would benefit patients regardless of financial status. The business press, initially skeptical of the delivery driver CEO, began reporting on her innovations. Patel's heir brings fresh perspective to tech giant, read one headline. Rise unconventional approach yields early wins, proclaimed another. With success came a new wave of attention. Invitations arrived to charity galas, industry conferences, and exclusive social clubs that would never have admitted Nisha Rai, delivery driver, but eagerly welcomed Nisha Rai, Billionaire CEO. The most remarkable transformation, however, occurred in how others perceived her relationship with Omar. Professor Farid, how wonderful to see you. Dean Richardson effused at a university fundraiser that Nisha attended as a major donor. We've been discussing reinstating your candidacy for the leadership committee. Your perspective would be invaluable. Omar's smile didn't reach his eyes. How interesting that my perspective has suddenly gained value. Later at the bar, Professor Wilkins approached them, champagne flute in hand. Nisha, darling, you must tell me where you found that exquisite gown. And Omar, we simply must have you both for dinner next weekend. Small gathering, just close friends. How strange, Nisha murmured as Wilkins drifted away. 6 months ago, she was warning you about your infatuation with the working class. Amazing how money clarifies vision, Omar replied dryly. Even the Farids underwent a convenient evolution in their thinking. Amira Farid called personally to invite Nisha to lunch, to get to know each other properly, while Ibrahim began casually mentioning his son's brilliant partner in business circles. They think I've won the lottery, Omar said bitterly after a particularly transparent family dinner. That I've somehow scored points by accidentally dating an heiress. Does it bother you? Nisha asked cautiously as they drove home. The way people treat you now? It's not me I'm worried about, Omar said. It's us. Everything's changed, Nisha. The power dynamic, the expectations, even the way we spend time together. He wasn't wrong. Their quiet evenings had been replaced by corporate events and social obligations. Their conversations about literature and philosophy had given way to discussions of market strategy and investment opportunities. Even their living situation had shifted. Nisha had purchased a secure estate for her siblings and parents, with a wing for herself and Omar, though he rarely stayed there, preferring his modest faculty apartment. I'm still me, Nisha insisted, though sometimes catching her reflection in the mirror, designer clothes, professional makeup, hair styled by a personal stylist, she wondered if that was still true. The strain in their relationship became impossible to ignore when the tabloids began speculating about Omar's motives. Fortune hunter? Blared one headline over a photo of Omar and Nisha at a charity event. Professor Land's billionaire girlfriend, what's his angle? This is absurd, Omar said, tossing the magazine aside. They've completely inverted reality. Nisha watched him pace their living room. Welcome to my world. Everyone questioning your motives, wondering what you're really after. Is that what you think? Omar stopped, staring at her. That I'm with you for your money. The money you didn't even have when we met? Of course not, Nisha said quickly. But you have to admit things between us feel different. You're distant. You barely sleep at the new house. You find excuses to miss corporate events. Because those events have nothing to do with who we are, Omar exploded. Do you think I enjoy watching you transform into someone who navigates shareholder politics and schmoozes with politicians? Who checks her phone during dinner and schedules 15-minute blocks of personal time? That's not fair, Nisha said, hurt bleeding into her voice. I'm learning to run a multi-billion-dollar company while caring for my family. I'm trying to use this opportunity to make a difference. And I admire that, Omar said, his voice softening. But I miss you, Nisha. The real you. The woman who quoted Rumi while delivering my dinner. Who sat on a fire escape and told me about constellations her father taught her to recognize. She still exists, Nisha whispered. She's just buried under responsibilities right now. Are you sure? Omar asked gently. Because from where I stand, it looks like you're becoming exactly what your grandfather wanted. Another Vikram Patel. The words hit Nisha like a physical blow. Was that true? Had she been so determined to prove herself worthy of her inheritance that she was turning into the man who had abandoned his own daughter for marrying beneath her station? The realization came with another, more disturbing thought. What if Omar was right about the changes in her? What if the wealth and power were gradually reshaping her into someone unrecognizable? Someone who might eventually look at Omar and see him as unsuitable, just as her grandfather had viewed her father. The question haunted her through a sleepless night and followed her to work the next morning. Sitting in her expansive office, surrounded by the trappings of corporate success, Nisha felt suddenly, profoundly alone. Her phone buzzed with a message from Tara. Devon's science fair is today. You promised to come. Nisha glanced at her schedule. Back-to-back meetings until 7 p.m., including a crucial negotiation with potential Japanese investors. Missing it would potentially cost the company millions. Is everything all right, Ms. Rai? Josephine asked from the doorway, noting her distraction. Nisha looked up, decision forming. Clear my schedule for the afternoon. The Kobayashi meeting needs to be rescheduled. But Ms. Rai, they've flown in specifically. Then they can stay an extra day, or we can video conference, Nisha said firmly. My brother's science fair is today. That takes priority. Josephine blinked in surprise but nodded. Of course. I'll make the arrangements. As Nisha gathered her things, she recalled something her mother had once told her about Vikram Patel. Your grandfather built an empire but lost his family. In the end, he died surrounded by employees, not loved ones. She had been given a fortune. But the real inheritance at stake was what kind of person she would choose to be. Nisha texted Omar. Meeting you at Westridge Middle School. Devon's science fair. Some things matter more than billion-dollar deals. His reply came moments later. Wouldn't miss it. See you there? As her driver navigated through midday traffic, Nisha made another decision. This weekend, she would take Omar away. No phones, no meetings, no assistants or bodyguards. Just the two of them, rediscovering what had drawn them together in the first place. Because while she was determined to honor her grandfather's legacy at Patel Innovations, she refused to repeat his greatest mistake, sacrificing love for legacy. What she didn't yet know was that forces were already in motion that would force her to choose between the empire she'd inherited and the relationship she cherished, a final test of what truly constituted wealth in Nisha. Rise transformed life. Fortune found. The headlines broke on a crisp Friday morning. Patel Airface's boardroom coupe. Nisha stared at her phone, scanning the business article that detailed how 5 board members, led by Rohan Kapoor, had formed a coalition to challenge her leadership. Sources close to Patel Innovations claim the board has concerns about Ms. Rai's priorities, the article stated. Particular criticism is focused on her redirection of resources toward medical technology research at the expense of more profitable ventures. Nisha set the phone down, a strange calm settling over her. 6 months into her role as CEO, she had anticipated this moment. The old guard had tolerated her, observed her, but never truly accepted her vision. They've scheduled an emergency board meeting for Monday, Josephine reported, her usual composure slightly fractured. The shareholders are getting nervous. Thank you, Josephine, Nisha replied evenly. Please clear my weekend schedule. I need time to prepare. Instead of returning to her office, Nisha did something unexpected. She walked out of the building, dismissed her driver, and took the subway across town to Westridge University. She found Omar in his office, surrounded by student papers and looking refreshingly unchanged by all that had transpired. He glanced up, surprise warming into concern as he registered her expression. What's happened? The board is moving against me, she said simply, closing the door behind her. They want to vote me out. Omar stood immediately. On what grounds? Officially? Concerns about my strategic vision? Unofficially. I'm not one of them, and I never will be. She sank into the chair across from his desk. The medical technology division is their primary complaint. It's not generating immediate profits, so they see it as a liability. The work that could help your parents and thousands like them, Omar noted. Nisha nodded. Exactly. They want to scale it back or sell it off entirely, focus on consumer tech with faster returns. What will you do? The question hung between them, weighted with history. Over the past months they had weathered strain in their relationship, finding a fragile new equilibrium. Omar had established boundaries, maintaining his career, his apartment, his independence, while supporting Nisha's growing confidence as a business leader. For her part, Nisha had worked to remain present in their relationship despite the pressures of her position, ensuring that the woman Omar fell in love with didn't disappear beneath the CEO's polished exterior. I don't know yet, Nisha admitted. I still control the majority of shares, but a unified board opposition would make governing the company nearly impossible. She met his eyes directly. I need your perspective, Omar, not as my boyfriend, but as someone who knows me better than anyone. Omar considered her request carefully. What would Nisha Rai, the woman who worked 3 jobs to support her family, who never took the easy path if it compromised her values, what would she do? A half-smile touched Nisha's lips. She'd fight. Then there's your answer. The weekend passed in strategic planning. Nisha assembled a small team of loyal executives and outside advisors. They analyzed voting blocks, prepared counter-arguments, and developed alternative proposals. By Sunday evening, she had a clear picture of the challenge ahead, and it wasn't encouraging. Even with your majority shares, you need board support to implement any major initiatives, explained Philip Chen, her legal advisor. They can effectively gridlock the company if they choose. Then I need to convince them, Nisha said, determination hardening her resolve. Or find a way around them. As dawn broke on Monday, Nisha made a detour before heading to the office. She visited the rehabilitation center where her parents now receive treatment. In the 6 months since their transfer, both had made remarkable progress. Her father was beginning to walk with assistance, and her mother's speech had returned, though still halting. You look worried, her mother observed as Nisha sat beside her. Big day at work, Nisha replied, attempting lightness. The board doesn't appreciate my vision for the company. Her mother took Nisha's hand, her grip surprisingly strong. Your grandfather was stubborn, believed his way was the only way. Don't make his mistake. What mistake was that? Thinking strength means never bending. A wry smile crossed her face. That's how trees break in storms. The word stayed with Nisha as she entered the Patel Innovations headquarters. Photographers clustered at the entrance, hoping to capture the embattled CEO. In the boardroom, tension thickened the air. Rohan Kapoor sat at the far end of the table, a symbolic challenge to Nisha's authority at the head. Before we begin, Nisha said as the room settled, I'd like to offer each of you something. She motioned to an assistant, who distributed slim folders to each board member. What's this? Director Sharma asked, opening his letters of resignation. Nisha replied calmly. Mine, and one for each of you to sign, should you choose. Murmurs rippled through the room. This was not the defensive posture they had expected. Inside my letter you'll find my terms for stepping down, Nisha continued. Primarily, the preservation of the medical technology division as an independent foundation, with guaranteed funding for the next decade. In exchange, I'll transfer voting control of my shares to a trust overseen by a neutral third party. And if we decline this generous offer? Kapoor asked, voice laden with sarcasm. Then you'll find the second document interesting. Nisha's voice remained steady. It's a proposal for restructuring the company entirely. Patel Innovations would become a holding company, with autonomous divisions operating independently. As majority shareholder, I can implement this without board approval, though it would be messy in public. She leaned forward slightly. I don't want either outcome. What I want is for us to stop fighting and start listening to each other. My grandfather built this company on innovation, not just technological innovation, but social innovation. He failed in his personal life by refusing to adapt, by valuing control over connection. I won't repeat that mistake. Nisha stood, commanding the room's attention. Here's what I propose instead. A genuine partnership. I acknowledge that I'm new to this world, that I have much to learn from your experience. But you need what I bring too, a fresh perspective. Connections to the real-world impact of our technologies, and yes, my personal story, which has become part of this company's brand whether you like it or not. She circulated the room, making eye contact with each member. The medical technology division isn't a charity project, it's the future. An aging global population means unprecedented demand for assistive technologies. We can lead that market while making a profound difference, and yes, generating significant returns in the process. Director Sharma spoke first. You're asking us to trust your instincts over decades of corporate experience. I'm asking you to combine your experience with my instincts, Nisha corrected. To recognize that sometimes an outsider's perspective is exactly what's needed to move forward. The debate that followed was intense, but remarkably productive. For the first time since Nisha had taken control, the board engaged with her ideas rather than simply tolerating or opposing them. By afternoon, they had reached a compromise. The medical division would continue with adjusted benchmarks and greater board oversight. In exchange, Nisha would work more closely with Kapoor on strategic planning, combining his market knowledge with her vision. As the meeting concluded, Kapoor approached her. That was unexpected. Which part? All of it. Coming in ready to resign, the restructuring threat, but mostly asking for partnership instead of demanding loyalty. He studied her with newfound respect. You're not what we expected, Ms. Rai. I never have been, she replied with a slight smile. That's my greatest strength. Later that evening, Nisha found herself sitting in her childhood bedroom in the new family home, surrounded by reminders of her former life, textbooks from her interrupted studies, a uniform from her first delivery job, photographs of her siblings before wealth complicated their lives. A soft knock at the door preceded Omar's entrance. Josephine said you left the office early. Everything okay? Better than okay, Nisha said. We reached an agreement. The board is on board cautiously. Congratulations. Omar sat beside her on the bed. So why are you hiding in here instead of celebrating? Nisha touched a photo of her family, taken 2 years ago before the accident, before the inheritance. I've been thinking about fortune, what it really means. And what have you concluded? That my grandfather had it backwards. He thought fortune was something you built and defended. But real fortune is what you already have. People who see you clearly and love you anyway. She turned to Omar. I almost lost sight of that. Omar took her hand, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. We both did for a while. Navigating the extremes. I've made a decision, Nisha said. About us. About the future. That sounds ominous, she laughed softly. It's not. I'm establishing a trust for my siblings' education and my parents' care, ensuring they're secure no matter what happens. And I'm setting up the medical foundation as a separate entity from Patel Innovations. Smart moves, Omar nodded. But what about you? I'm staying on as CEO for now, but I've also applied to finish my degree. Night classes, just like before. She squeezed his hand. And I've sold the mansion. Bought a house halfway between the company and the university. Not too big, not too small. A home, not a statement. Omar's eyebrows rose in surprise. You don't need to change your life for me, Nisha. I'm not changing for you, she clarified. I'm changing for me. Finding balance. The board meeting today made me realize something important. I don't want to be Vikram Patel. I don't want power for its own sake. I want a life with meaning, with connection. She touched his face gently, with love. Even if that love comes from a mere literature professor, he teased. Especially then. She kissed him softly. The world will always see us as the billionaire and the professor. But we know the truth. We're just Nisha and Omar finding our way together. 6 months later, Nisha stood at a podium in the newly established Patel Medical Research Center. Beside her, her parents watched with pride as she addressed the gathered press, researchers, and patients. Today marks not just the opening of a facility, but the beginning of a new approach to medical technology, she said, one that prioritizes accessibility alongside innovation, where breakthroughs belong to everyone, not just those who can afford them. In the audience, Omar sat with Tara and Devon, now thriving in their respective schools. Behind them, the Patel Innovations Board, members, including Kapoor, observed with cautious optimism as their unconventional CEO continued to redefine success. My grandfather built an empire based on what technology could do, Nisha continued. I intend to build on his legacy by focusing on who technology can help. That's the true fortune I hope to create, not measured in dollars but in lives improved. Later, as they walked through the research center's gardens, Omar slipped his arm around Nisha's waist. Professor Nisha Rai has a nice ring to it, he commented, referring to her recently completed business degree. CEO Omar Fareed doesn't sound bad either, she countered with a smile, nodding to his new role heading the Patel Foundation's educational initiatives. I think we've found a better balance than either of those titles, Omar mused. Partners, in every sense. Nisha stopped walking, turning to face the man who had loved her when she had nothing and stood by her when she had everything. You know, my mother once told me that wealth doesn't change who you are. It just makes you more of whoever you already were. Wise woman, your mother. She is, Nisha agreed. And she helped me understand something important. I was never the delivery driver, just as I'm not the billionaire CEO now. Those are circumstances, not identity. Omar pulled her closer. So who are you, Nisha Rai? I'm the woman who believes in working hard for what matters, who values honesty over convenience, who loves deeply and without reservation. She smiled up at him. Who happens to have found the real fortune in life? Someone who sees me clearly, no matter what else changes. As evening descended over the city, they walked hand in hand toward their modest new home. Not too grand, not too humble, but perfectly suited to the life they were building together. A life defined not by bank accounts or titles, but by the choices they made and the values they upheld. In the end, Nisha had indeed become a billionaire overnight. But the true wealth in her life had nothing to do with money, and everything to do with what she had discovered along the way. That fortune, in its purest form, is measured by love freely given and graciously received, the one currency that never devalues, never fluctuates, and pays dividends for a lifetime.